So for number 1, the first thing that we do is we need to get rid of the 5. So we add 5 to both sides, cancel that on the left, and 11 plus 5 is 16. We then divide by 4. 4 is cancel, and 16 divided by 4 is 4. For number 2, don't forget to distribute first. So 8 times n is 8n. 8 times positive 2 is positive 16. Then we get rid of 16 by subtracting on both sides. 24 minus 16 is 8. And then we divide both sides by 8, so n is 1. For number 3, be careful. Make sure that you are distributing negative 3, not just 3. Make sure you're distributing it to positive 2t and negative 1, not just 1. Watch the signs. So negative 3 times 2t is negative 6t. Negative 3 times negative 1 is positive 3, because negative times a negative is a positive, right? Then from there, I think we're set. We subtract 3. Then we divide by negative 6. And t is equal to 1. It doesn't matter if you write it like this or if you say t equals 1. These are the same answers. Okay, so for number 4, we first want to get rid of the 6. So we subtract. So we subtract 6. So we have 8 minus 6 is 2 on the right. And we're left with p over 4 on the left. Now, whenever I see a fraction and I see a value in the denominator, I always focus on getting rid of that denominator, whether it's a variable or a number. So you're allowed to multiply by that red circle by 4 on both sides. What we do on the left cancels because that's an inverse operation. So then p is equal to 2 times 4 or 8. That's our answer. For number 5, there's multiple steps. We distribute that 5. Be careful again with your signs. 5 times 3q is 15q. 5 times negative 10 is negative 50. And then we just drop down this negative 5q. Next step, before we solve for q, we need to combine like terms. So we combine the positive 15q and negative 5q, and that's how we end up with the 10q. So we have 10q and negative 50. We're then isolating q by adding 50 to both sides. So we have 35 equals 10q. We divide by 10. And make sure you leave your answer in simplified fraction form, no decimals. So both the top and bottom divide by 5. And so 35 divided by 5 gets us 7, and 10 divided by 5 gets us 2. So you can leave it as 7 over 2 equals q. You can write it like this, q equals 7 over 2. Or you could write it as q equals 3 and a half, but no decimals. Okay, for the fraction problem in number 6, we first want to move the negative 3/4. So pretend it's an integer. Pretend we have negative 2y minus 3 equals 5. You all find that one easy, right? You would add 3 to both sides first. Okay, well, this is the same concept. We're trying to get rid of this green bubble. We're trying to get rid of negative 3/4 instead of negative 3. So, like adding 3, we're just going to add that fraction to both sides. It's gone from the left-hand side. Now, on the right-hand side, we need to add 5, the number that was already there, plus 3/4. Adding fractions can be kind of tricky, so sometimes I'll do the work off to the side. So if I do that work off to the side, 5 plus 3/4, you put the 5 over a 1. We need a common denominator, so we multiply the left fraction by 4 on top and bottom, and that's why we get 20 over 4 plus 3 over 4. If the denominator is the same, it's a 4, we add the top, so we have 23. So 23 over 4. So you'll notice when I simplified, that's how I got 23 over 4. The next step, we're trying to isolate the y. We have negative 2/3 y. We're allowed to multiply by the reciprocal. So we multiply both sides by negative 3/2. Okay, so then the next step is when we multiply by that reciprocal, negative 3/2. Well, on the left side it cancels, right? Because it's inverse operation. So we're left with y, which is what we want. And on the right side with fractions, it's easy. We just go across the top and multiply. 23 times negative 3 is negative 69 over 4 times 2, which is 8. So our final answer is negative 69 over 8. And this fraction doesn't simplify as an improper fraction. 69 and 8 are not divisible by any other numbers in common other than 1. So then for number 7, you can think of plus and minuses as two different terms, okay? Different parts, different terms. So if I'm trying to isolate r, one way is get rid of the negative 8. It's separated from this red box that r is in. So you can add 8, gone. So on the right side we have 58 now. Now on the left-hand side, I have that box. Then what I'm gonna do is, like I was saying before, whenever we have a fraction and we have a value in the denominator, to get rid of that number, we can multiply both sides by that number, or if it's a variable, we can. So that's why I multiplied both sides by 4. The side that I'm getting rid of it from, which is the left, it just cancels. We don't distribute it, we don't do anything, it just cancels because it's an inverse operation. Then we're left with what was on top. The 2 times r minus 3, and then that equals 232. So from there, we distribute the 2. I'll rewrite this. So we get the 2r minus 6 equals 232. Then we add 6. And we get 2r equals 237. Oops, just kidding. 238 divided by 2. So we get r is 119.